readers, welcome to the Literally Reading Podcast. We're Ellie and Tracy, two friends that read in any spare minute that we have.
On this show, we'll chat about the books that we're literally reading right now, and each week we'll crack the book open on a bookish topic. We hope to fill your ears and TBRs with new and backlist books.
We'll always be honest about the books we like and don't, and our descriptions will always be spoiler-free. Thanks for joining us here where we're literally reading all the time. Hi readers, welcome to the Literary Lineup April 2024 edition. In this little mini episode, Ellie and I are going to share 2 to 3 books that we are really hoping to pick up in the month of April. So these books we have not read before. Frequently they are books that haven't even been published or are being published in April. Sometimes they're an old backlist book from our shelves, but either way, these are books that have made it on to our future TBR and we are very excited to pick up. Before we do today though, Ellie, I want to talk a little bit about Patreon because we have really been having some fun over there.
Yes, we have. We have a lot of really fun, creative content over there.
Now been doing Patreon. Can you believe it's been 3 months? I really cannot. But this month, okay, I specifically want to talk about an episode, something that we did on Patreon that I thought was really, really fun. So every once in a while on Literally Reading on this big show, we do a spoiler full episode. Now, we have talked a whole lot about doing it about all sorts of books. We've only done it twice and they've both been about Rebecca Yaros's books because we really needed to talk about them afterwards. But in theory, we would really like to do this more frequently. And we decided to also do this over on Patreon with Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. You know, that book that we all read almost 20 years ago, which is so crazy. Ellie and I reread it and we answered all of our Patreon members' burning questions about Twilight. It was really, really fun. And I think what made it really fun too is we really prepared for it, which we frequently don't do for our spoiler for episodes. We kind of just go off the cuff. But you and I really sat down and you specifically thought about so many great questions about it. And I just thought it was such a fun episode. So I just want to put a push out there. If you are on the fence about joining us over on From the Bookstacks of Literally Reading, which is our Patreon only feed, please join us. We have a lot of fun. We're doing some really creative things over there. Listen, you want to know why we're Team Edward or Team Jacob. So head over there. You can catch the link in our Instagram profile, or you can just search for us on Patreon From the Bookstacks of Literally Reading and sign up. We also released a bonus episode last month. So right now we're 2 times a month having so much fun over there. Please join us. Okay, Ellie. Now that I've talked at Patreon, are we ready to talk about what we're hoping to literally read in April?
Okay, the first book I have is She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. This one publishes April 2nd of this year. I have only read one Mary Kubica. Have you read any of her books?
None, and she has so many.
She has so many. I don't know how often she's putting them out, but she has a ton of backlist. The one I read was called The Good Girl, and it was back in 2014. It was really good. It was kind of like an abduction story. I love that. I'm like, it was good. It was about abduction. It's kind of sad.
I say that about murder all the time. We're in a safe place here, okay?
I know, right? And this one is getting really great reviews. And so I'm always looking for another thriller author this time of the year. So I think this one could be really fun. We have Megan Michaels, and she is an overworked single mom to her teenage daughter. She works at a hospital as a nurse and often works that night shift. One night while at the hospital, a young woman arrives with a severe brain injury. Caitlin, the patient, apparently jumped from a bridge and fell over 20 feet onto train tracks. But all is not as it seems. A witness comes forward with new information, and pretty soon, Megan, who tries desperately to not get too attached to her patients, is trying to figure it all out. Caitlin jumped, or was she pushed off the bridge? That's the question. As she gets more and more involved in the case, she realizes that her involvement might create danger for her and her daughter. So Megan is walking into dangerous territory here. The reviews say it is fast-paced, and I read over and over again that people binged this one. It sounds perfect for the summer. It is set at a hospital, which is also supposed to be kind of creepy and original. So I think this one sounds really great. It's She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica.
That does sound good, Ellie. That sounds like a perfect poolside read or beach read.
Really original, right?
My first book of April is The Secret Lives of Booksellers and Librarians, True Stories of the Magic of Reading by James Patterson and Matthew Eversman. This publishes April 9th, 2024. So this is way off of my normal literary lineup pick because it is nonfiction, but it's bookish nonfiction. So James Patterson, one of the most prolific authors of our time, takes true stories from librarians and booksellers and puts them on the page for us to enjoy. I think we all love the thrill of handing someone a book and saying, you have got to read this. And these people, these librarians and booksellers, they get to do it every day, all day, and make a living from it. Like, is that not the dream, Ellie?
That is yes, definitely.
It's the dream. I'm not usually a reader of nonfiction, but I really loved Susan Orlean's The Library Book about LA Central Library from a few years ago. Although the mystery behind the fire that destroyed the historical building was fascinating to read about in the library book, what I actually really enjoyed reading was how the library was built and organized and the different events and programs the library offers. It felt really fun to see a behind-the-scenes peek about how libraries operate. So I'm hoping to get more of that and even more into the science of book recommendations. Like, how do they do it? I want to know. The Goodreads synopsis says this about this book. To be a bookseller or a librarian, you have to play detective, be a treasure hunter, a matchmaker, an advocate, a visionary. I love that. That is like so inspiring to read about. So I am very excited to pick this one up. I really trust James Patterson, and I think this will be like kind of a fun book to kind of pick throughout the summer. And that is The Secret Lives of Booksellers and Librarians, True Stories of the Magic of Reading by James Patterson and Matthew Eversman.
First of all, I'm really impressed that you picked a nonfiction book here.
Thank you.
I know, right? We're growing. But I also have seen this one around so much. The cover is great. And I also think it just sounds like a perfect thing to kind of pick through as you want to. Maybe not read in like the only book you're reading, but you can kind of pick it up and put it down. That sounds great. Okay, my second and last book, guys. I didn't have a ton for this month, and I really wanted to just pick ones I was really excited about. So this is my last book for the month, and it is How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwong. This one publishes on April 9th. Yulin Kwong is a screenwriter and director. So I'm going to tell you about the author first. She's a screenwriter and director. She was once fired from a Hallmark movie for being, quote, too hip for Hallmark. And she is now adapting screenwriter of Emily Henry's People We Meet on Vacation. Yes, our own beloved. I'm saying like she's ours. I mean, she is everybody's. We all love her. People We Meet on Vacation, as well as the writer-director of the forthcoming Beach Read feature film for 20th Century Studios. Did you know that Emily Henry had 2 of her books in talks right now?
I'm very excited for this.
So let me tell you about this one because the plot is a little bit different, but I just had to share all that because I feel like this author is going to have the writing chops to pull this off. And she's definitely pulling from her own life. So we have Helen Zhang, and she is a best-selling author and with a very successful career. She's singularly focused on her career, especially because she wants as much control as possible. When she gets a big break and gets a spot in the writer's room for a TV adaptation of her own popular YA series, she's endlessly grateful, but she struggles with feeling like she deserves this chance. Grant is also escaping his past, a past that he shares with Helen. He lives in LA, is a screenwriter, and guessed it, he has a spot on Helen's show. The two haven't seen each other in the past 13 years and are now face to face with the trauma that they both endured. Working together is messy, but maybe it also allows them for a second chance and room for healing. This one feels like a romance that we like, one that has deeper issues at play. I'm hopeful this will be good, especially since she's writing from her own personal experience, and we also know she was picked to work on so much of Emily Henry's work. So that is How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwong.
That one does, just her connection with Emily Henry, I'm like, oh, what? This sounds interesting. What? Let's do it. So
exactly.
Can't wait to hear about it. Okay, my last book. I also only have 2 books this month. We shared a lot of our books in our March Madness episode. I think that a lot of the books were published in April, which I think is really good news that we're not going to have to wait a long time to get a bunch of our fun spring, summer reading in. So that's why we only each have 2 this month, but they're good ones. So my last book is The Twilight Gardens by Sarah Nisha Adams. This publishes also on April 9th, 2024. And I am on a book about books streak. This one isn't exactly about books, like how The Secret Lives of Librarians was, but I chose it because I really enjoyed another book by this author, The Reading List. That was feel-good fiction at its finest, and it just was a really sweet story about a widower finding his wife's list of favorite books and then deciding to read them to feel close to her. And during this process, he finds a new community of unlikely friends. This one also sounds super feel-good fiction-y. Let me tell you about it. In this novel of friendship, a small, neglected community garden sits untended and overgrown. But this garden used to be a place of belonging for the neighborhood surrounding it, and slowly but surely it will become that place again. The need for connection is so strong for all of us, and this garden provides a place for it to happen and to grow. Okay, this sounds a little bit cheesy, but it's also sounds really sweet and simple and sometimes kind of just what you need. The Reading List also had kind of a cheesy setup, but it just was one of those books, kind of like All the Lonely People by Mike Gale, even A Man Called Uva by Friedrich Bachmann. Those books are just great examples of feel-good fiction that just make you want to like squeeze your neighbor. And so sometimes you need that. So that is The Twilight Gardens by Sarah Nisha Adams.
That sounds really great. I think that's great for this kind of time of the year.
Well, Ellie, that felt like a short episode, but we have so many books to read. I feel like our next couple weeks of literary lineup are going to be so chock full of so many books. So like get your TBRs ready, guys. Just like read them up because we're going to be filling them.
And we're going to have so much fun talking about them as they come out and we get a chance to read them all.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, readers, so much for joining us on our literary lineup for April 2024. We will be back next week with a full episode. And happy listening and happy reading, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Literally Reading. For a full list of the books we talked about, check out our show notes embedded in your podcast app or find them on our website, literallyreading.com. You can find us on Instagram at literally_reading, where we review books and show you where we're literally reading right now.
Help us find new listeners by rating and reviewing Literally Reading wherever you listen. For questions and episode recommendations, please email us at hello@literallyreading.com. Thanks for listening, and please be sure to subscribe to our podcast. A new episode will be released every Wednesday. Happy reading!